regard to taste and insights into the decorative arts in Australia, his thoughts will be quite amazing, and his eye is quite impeccable. So I'm really delighted to have you here to say all these nice things about Stephen. Over to you.
Thank you. Although Stephen, and for those of you who don't know Stephen, he's standing right over there, was born in New South Wales, he's very much a potter associated or an artist associated with Adelaide, where he's lived since 1982. He trained at the Jam Factory workshops and then subsequently had his own studio there. In 1990 he became head of the ceramics section of the Jam Factory workshops, and then later in 2004 director of the Jam Factory Craft and Design Centre. So he's had a very interesting background of both administrative work in the arts, teaching, as well as keeping his own practice going at the same time. Many artists actually, of course, have to work this interesting mixture of administrative teaching as well as their own practice. In a sense, they often feed off each other, but few have done it with such great success in the land that Stephen has. In his work, as you can see from this show, he's been resolute in his exploration of the decorative surface. And this distinctive style that's now so instantly recognisable in the works here and in his works really emerged in the early 1990s, and that's when I certainly started looking very carefully at his pots. And this is very much a painter decorating the surface. As you'll see from the notes on the works, he has others, throwers and modellers and surfboard makers to make the pots or the objects for him. The larger vases here are made by Mark Heidenreich, themselves of tour de force in potting. By following this sort of segmented approach to making ceramics, Stephen's really, in a way, turned his back on much of 20th century ceramic production, the sort of mode that really privileged the artist potter, where the potter dug the clay, ground the oxides for the glazes, fired it in their own hand-built kiln, or at least that was the ideal, and this is, of course, very much a different tradition. Although his works are handmade, the production really involves probably two people, Stephen and the potter, or the person who makes the forms. They derive very much from ceramics made by big ceramics firms during the 19th century in Britain. During the second half of the century, the famous ones, such as Wedgwood, Minton, Dalton and Worcester, employed first-rate artists to work on the shapes of their ceramics and, more importantly, to create the designs for them. Some of these pots were very large. They were exhibited at the big exhibitions in the 19th century, and in a sense we can see their very illustrious descendants here. And some of those big pots that were made by these firms in the 19th century entered Australian collections in the public institutions at the beginning of the 20th century. One of the reasons, of course, why these entrepreneurs who ran these firms commissioned artists to do such elaborate work for them is, of course, they knew that good work will always sell as a promotion for business. But in their cases where they had a team of artists, maybe a different gilder from the decorator, and the person who designed the shape was different from the maker, here it's all done, all the decorations done by one hand, the painting and the gilding. And there's a nice image here showing actually how it's done inside the booklet here, which shows from working from the blank that Stephen's worked from doing the design and then working up through the colours and the gilding. So that's the production side of it, but what are the designs themselves? As you can see, the shapes are very simple. They recede, providing perfect vehicles for the decorative surface. What's changed over the years from Stephen's earlier works in the early 1990s is scale, and during the 1990s they transformed from very small objects, exquisite teapots and tea caddies and mugs, to the equally exquisite but gigantic vases that are notably like this scale here, and even bigger. Both of these, in this case, are feats of both potting and decoration. Stephen's designs, despite the origins of them, you can see many references in them, are totally original. Of course, they abound in visual quotes and references, and in this he's like many artists of his generation who have quote from art history and appropriate from the storehouse of art history. Stephen casts his net widely for references, and his work invites you to spot the quote. He's very knowledgeable about art and art history, and the sources are international, old and modern. Many of the references are Australian, so you can see the kangaroo, the cockatoo, Sydney Harbour Bridge over there on the pair of dogs. And for instance, as is well known, the anatomically impossible sort of backwards kangaroo that is so prevalent on the surfboards and some of the platters is derived ultimately from the painting by George Stubbs, who painted from skins that were probably stuffed of kangaroos that came back with Sir Joseph Banks in 1771 to London. The image was popularised through engravings, and for a while, for a few years, that's decades in the 1770s, was the standard image for the kangaroo, the iconic image. And in the ceramics context, it's also interesting that the first image of a kangaroo on ceramics, which also looks over its shoulder, was on a mug made in about 1793 in a Staffordshire transfer printed design. Other references draw from art history. There's Hokusai's famous wave, and what are we to make of all the other designs? Stevens' love of patterns is seen in all the works, and there's very little of the surface that's not actually covered with outline or pattern. And there's a great deal to look at. And interestingly, I was at the National Gallery in Canberra a week ago, and knowing that I was coming here, I thought I'd like to look at the platter of Stevens that's on display there. I couldn't get near it because the person was really going through, absolutely methodically going through the entire design of the whole plate. So here you've got a great opportunity to look at things firsthand without showcases interfering. Now, all this enjoyment and obviously pleasure in decoration might just seem purely decor, but it does have a serious intent. The references to 19th century ceramics, and indeed the references to transfer of printed blue and white, are also about visual colonisation, how we see Australia through British eyes, about absorbing culture from one remove. The chinoiserie patterns on blue and white earthenware were imported to Australia throughout the 19th century, spreading a taste for exoticism of China from Britain, rather perhaps than directly from our neighbour to the north. The Aboriginal figures and kangaroo come from earlier images, engravings, rather than direct observation, and similarly the William Morris or the Morris designs are not only British, but the artists particularly chosen Morris patterns that were used in Australian houses during the 19th century as part of their furnishings. The Staffordshire dogs over on the platform there, common enough as mantelpiece ornaments to be a cliche, are given full Australian treatment with images of the bridge, the Eternity Man, and sitting as they do like that to actually symbolise the heads themselves or the entrance to Sydney. And interesting, the very small arm you can see in the showcase, the one in the showcase that's over there, that looks a bit like, well, that's a doll's arm shape, it looks a bit like a reliquary, has this wonderful designs of one of Adelaide's most beautiful buildings, which is the 1870s greenhouse and botanic gardens. And above all, as you can see as you look around, it's Stephen's interest in birds that are all decorated so wonderfully on these pots, and see how cleverly and carefully he captures the feathers and the details of them. So probably that's enough for me to let you then wander, but I can't resist a quote from Oscar Wilde, who was famously quoted in the late 1870s as saying, "I find it harder and harder every day to live up to my blue china." So I hope you enjoy Lark's Tongues in Astley. Thank you.